The CSS. I know we kind of like zipped through it the other day when we were working on our um, on the tic-tac-toe game, right? Which if you haven't started your Hangman game yet, right, probably should start working on that, chipping away at it a little bit, experimenting with it. That way you don't put it off till the end and realize that you need help. Yeah. Yes. That is like the current project that's going for the next week or two. Okay, so let's get started with CSS. Does anybody know what CSS stands for? Yeah. Boom, yeah, Farah. She says it stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Does anybody know why it might be named that? Why it might have that name? Okay, well, we'll hopefully learn that throughout. Okay, so essentially what that means is children components take on properties that are in styles that are assigned to their parents. Okay, so let me show you what I mean. So let's in our HTML here, let's go ahead and just make kind of a blank screen. HTML. Oops. Go on to 5. And inside of our body here, we can make a UL. And inside of there, we'll give it some LIs. I'll say guitar. I'll go back to the guitar one. We'll say sax and piano. We'll say keys. Stay like less formal with sax. Okay. Right, and we can check to make sure that things are looking the way we expect them to. It's a little smaller than, and we can look at the elements and see we've got our body, we've got our UL, and our LIs. Right, this is just kind of setting the groundwork. So what we can do with the CSS or cascading style sheets is it's going to allow us to style our elements. So instead of all of our pages looking completely like crap, we'll actually be able to start to make them look like real websites. And then that's pretty much like you can connect everything because you have JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. You can start to make pretty much anything. I mean, there's frameworks that make things nicer to work in, but if you're really good with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, you can build anything you want. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so if I give, so okay, how do we actually make something hooked up with styles? So there's a couple different ways. There's a style tag that we could make, and it looks like this. It says style, and in here you can go ahead and style elements. So I could say, okay, let's make a header tag too. Let's go make more tags on here. Okay. So let's say I want my header tag to actually be really small for whatever reason. I want it to be the same height. I want it to only be like 10 pixels. I can do that by inside of my style tag, selecting it. So the way you select the name of a tag is a few different ways. It's actually the same way that you would do it in a query selector, if you're already comfortable with that. If not, we'll review it. But if we just wanted the H1, because there's only one H1 on there, I could call it with just H1. I don't need to put it in quotes. Open and close my curly braces. Go to the next line, and then I can give it its properties. So I would say font size. Oops, font size. Colon, and then you say what you want. So let's say I want 10 pixels, because I want it to be 10 pixels high on the screen. And for each property that you add, you need to end it with a semicolon. If you don't end it with a semicolon, your code actually won't work. It will break. Right, so that's a difference, because JavaScript compiles all of its code, and then it can add the semicolons for you sometimes, depending on the environment you're working in. CSS, you need to put those. Okay, so if we save that, we can go over here, refresh, and now we have this tiny header tag. Okay, interesting, right? Not the most exciting thing in the world, but interesting. So that's one way to do it with the style tag. The other way that we can do things is with inline styling, which is not something you would generally want to do, but it's feasible. So let's say I wanted to give this background, this whole body, we'll give it a background pink. Actually, I have to remember the syntax for this because really I don't use that much. Style element inline. Inline style sheet. Style, color, okay. So for that, you instead of writing style tag up here, you would instead write it directly into the opening tag where you would say style, quote, and then you would pass in a string and say, okay, we could say background, and we could say pink if we wanted to make it pink, and we would add our colon, semicolon, go back over to our page here, refresh, and now we have a pink background. Okay, so, interesting enough. So can anybody see what might be the downsides to this type of styling? Isaiah? Yeah, it could get very cluttered, right? If I have a huge website and I'm doing all of my styling in this body, or like in the tag, or in a style tag at the top, it could start to the file could start to get very long, and it could start to get very hard to organize. Right? Imagine if we were trying to change a property, we'd have to figure out through all of the elements, like where it is on the page, and it could lead to a difficult circumstance. Same with in the style tag, this could just be really unruly. This is very similar to like when we were writing our JavaScript inside of a script tag. So we're going to put the kibosh on that and make a CSS file. You'll often see it written as master.css if you're only doing one CSS file. I've already written mine. There are ways to also have multiple CSS files, and that's a pretty common, very, very common thing that you'll want to do as our websites grow, because you'll want to be able to style different sections of your code differently and keep those very organized. But for now, we're just going to have one file. And so in here, we write the same stuff we would write in our style tag. So let's get rid of the style tag for now. Right, so if I comment this out, our H1 should go back to normal size, which it does. And then let's link our style sheet to our HTML. And the way that we do that is via a link tag. So I'm going to write link, and it says what type of relationship. I think that stands for that, and it's like a style sheet. So this is going to have our styles. And then we have href, and this is going to point to the file, right? The relative path. So for this, it would be /master.css. Right, so JavaScript goes inside of a script tag with a source. CSS goes inside of a link tag with an href. Fair? Okay, so let's go ahead and change that h1 again. So the way we do that is the same way that we had been doing it in the style sheet. So if I wanted to change the H1, I would write the name of the tag. And this is actually going to affect all H1 tags. Okay, so that's something to keep note of. If I'm changing a tag directly, this is going to change all occurrences of that tag. Yeah. Yes. Excellent question. So the question is, how do we do it if we just wanted to change one? Well, we could do that with an ID, right? We could potentially do that with a class. Class is something you usually do, though, with groups. You could also specifically style something else. Like if I just wanted the first LI, I can tell my UL that or something. But I have to know, I have to get the right UL, right? So yeah, actually I'm gonna make a better point of this. So instead of doing H1, I'm gonna do, well, I'll do H1 first, right? We do the H1, we make an object, and then we say the properties we want. So if I wanted to change my font size, I could just say 10 pixels, end it with a semicolon, we'll go back, and it's still working, right? It's updated our instruments. So CSS isn't too killer. CSS is more of like a lot of futzing around with something. And it's a very good idea to get familiar with these developer tools to practice, to like make sure you really like, instead of going back and forth and guessing, I would highly recommend like selecting elements and being like, okay, well, how do I really want this H1 to look? So I would select my H1, right, and I'm brought to this screen. My H1 is highlighted, and I can change the font things here. So if I was like, oh, let's see, what would it look like if my font size was 15? I might need to check that one. I'm like, oh, okay. Oops, let me check that one. It's like, oh, that's wants me to change directly in here. Okay. So this, oh, okay, what's the size I like? Okay, I like 15, right? I could say, what else do I want about this? Maybe I want it bold, so I would say font weight, and I could see the different, how bold do I want it? Just bold is fine. I'm not really seeing much of a change on these, to be honest. Maybe I'll give it a background color of yellow. Like, ooh, okay, yeah. Nah, I like yellow-green more, right? So this is a good way to like do all of your styling and testing, and then I go, okay, I like that. I also want to change the color of the font, so I'm going to write color, and I'll go like, I don't know, who do I like? Maybe aquamarine. How does that? That's unreadable. So I guess I don't really like that. Let's go back to red. Oh, okay, that looks good, right? That's kind of like how you would style, and then you can copy this and go into your code once you figured it all out. And you're like, oh, okay, that's really how I want. That's how I want my style to look. So I'll save it with that. I have to make sure the format's nicely, and then when I refresh the page, it's still there, right? But it's a really good idea to practice changing it and studying it in here first. You'll save a lot of time. Trust me. Questions on that? Okay, cool. So let's say I want to change guitar. I like guitar. I want guitar to have the text of green. So I could go ahead and do my li. So I say, okay, li color green. Okay, and we refresh, and I go, oh, okay, so all of my LIs are green. Can anybody tell me why? Ashia? Right, she says, because I didn't identify a specific LI. I just said LI. This changes all of the LIs. Okay? So if I wanted to just change the specific, right, I could go in here and I could give my ID, my LI there, I could give it an ID. So let's say I give this an ID of guitar. If I want to go back and select my guitar, I have to use the octathorpe because it's an ID related thing. And I'll say guitar. I'll save that. And now only guitar is green, right? So I'm able to specify the one that I want. But what if I just wanted guitar and keys to be green? What would I do then? Yeah, and why not an ID? Excellent. So why? What's like the overall reason why?
Class allows you to group them versus IDs one.
Perfect, right? So IDs should be unique. So there should only be one element with that ID. The word unique is what I was trying to push you towards. You had the complete correct answer though, right? But the key word is that IDs are unique. IDs are always unique. Even when we start dealing with databases and all of that, things will be placed in and they'll have an ID, and those will always be unique. It's like very important. Okay, that's like it's like your fingerprint. That's your ID or your SSI. Like what's your social security? No, just kidding. SSN, not I. I don't know what I is. What is SSI? Identification. Ah, that's why. Got it. Okay, so let's pretend we made a mistake and we did make an ID, and I'll just put this as band because these would both be band. Let's say. And in my CSS, I change this to say band. And we refresh. Yeah, so it still works because it's trying to work, but it's not good behavior. So the reason I'm showing you this is because I know someone's going to call me over, and they're going to say something weird is happening, and I'll say, hey, you have the same ID for multiple elements, and you'll say, but it's working, and I'll say, it's not okay, all right? So we can't have the ID like that, even though it is currently working, right? Instead of having an ID, we're going to say class. Right? Think about it as like you're in a class with everyone, right? It's like a collection of things. And so the way we grab class is instead of doing the octathorpe, we're going to do the period. Dot class, or yeah, dot band in this situation. We'll refresh, and it's still going to look the same as it did before, but now it will be set up correctly. Okay, cool. So what do we think happens if I do dot band down here and I say color is pink? Not pink because we already have a pink. Maroon. All right, so take a second with the person beside you and think of what the output is going to be with this. All right, clap your hands once if you can hear my voice. All right, let's, clap your hands once if you can hear my voice. All right, let's get to the predictions. What do we think? Yeah, Rafid. Into maroon? Okay, cool. Any other predictions? No? Everybody thinks it's going to change?
I was
Shia?
thinking that maybe it would start off green but then change to maroon.
Interesting. Okay, it started off green, changed to maroon. Any other? Yeah, Henry?
I think it's going to be green.
They're going to stay green? Is that what you said? Okay, cool. So we're like all over the map. That's fun. Let's find out. So when we refresh, wait, I think I didn't save. That's a fake out, yeah? They both turn to maroon. So style sheets, very much like JavaScript or HTML, read from top to bottom, right? So whatever it was most recently assigned is what it will be. Okay? So if we change the color again below this, it would be whatever that is. It's always going to be the most recent style that it received, or the lowest on the page. Okay? So because of that, you actually don't. Once you've styled at one spot, you want to change that spot. You don't want to keep writing the same style. Otherwise, it's kind of messy. If you saw that I wrote 2 versions of band, you might think that looks a little unusual already because it's, why don't I just put it in the other band? Well, I should. Okay, what's the next thing? Okay, so let's say I'm not worried about the band for now, and we'll go back to our styling just L. What if I style the UL? What if I say UL, and then I say color green? What's going to happen if I do that? What? It's the parent. Okay, so Deja says all the children will take on the color of the parent. Agree? Disagree? Yeah? Okay, let's try it out. Is this like genetics? It is, right? If your parents are a certain color, you're probably the same color, or some mix of the two, right? But like it's the same thing, and this is where the word cascading style sheets actually comes from. It's because the style cascades through the elements, right? So if I put something on the body, it's essentially going to be affecting all of its children. So if everything's in the body, like if I want to change all of the font to be something funny or something, right? And I say body up here, and I say font family. By the way, there's a lot of different styling things, right? I can choose my font. I don't know what any of these are. I'll say cursive. It seems unreadable to me. And I refresh, right? Everything picks up this horrible cursive. Which, I'm sure has its time and its place. So no offense if you write cursive. I just can't. I won't read it. I'm a moron. I can't read cursive. Okay. But that's all right. I can kind of read that. Anyway, the sax looks pretty suspicious. Let's change. Let's change this because this video is made for kids. Okay, excellent. So you can see that the style has cascaded into the children, right? The grandparent was a cursive. The mother was a cursive. I'm a cursive, right? Okay, so that's key. That's a key thing to remember. Other properties that are very common are ways to align text. So if I want my H1 to be in the middle of the screen, I can say text align and center. Common property to give to things. I'll refresh, and we can see it's there. So something to maybe be aware of is, well, we can see if we highlight things, we can see how big things are. Like this LI goes all the way across the page. That's its width. This LI goes all the way across the page, and this LI goes all the way across the page, and so does our header. So far, all of these elements actually stretch a width of 100%. Right, so that's this default property. Well, it doesn't need to stretch 100%, right? I could change this. If I wanted my LIs to be less, right, let's experiment. I'll go in here, I'll select an LI, and let's go ahead and give it our own stylings. So we can say the width, and we could give it, well, I could say 10 pixels if I wanted to. And we'll see that now it's really short. See how the blue highlight is how wide. Obviously, that's kind of like crazy. I don't have to do pixels. I could do percentages. So maybe I'll say 25%. So it takes up 25% of the screen. Seems more reasonable to me. The orange is not the element. It's just the blue is the element there. So I go, okay, that looks good. I'm going to go back and I'm going to change. Well, I'll change my whole UL, let's say, to be 25%. Right, so you can say the pixels or the percentages. No, I didn't mean to do that. Refresh. And now we can see that. I'll just highlight them from down here. But the whole UL itself is 25% of the width. All right, just more styling. Oh, let's also get rid of that cursor. That's really horrible. Okay. Okay, so the width is something you can change. The height is something that you can change. Let's see a good property. All right, let's add an image. Let's go find a cat image out there. What? Someone said that something about a dog? Not in this class. Just kidding. Cat pet. No, 100% there's no dogs allowed in this classroom. It is illegal. Oh, this cat kind of looks like mine. So I will get that. Well, it looks like one of my cats. Let's copy the image address. And let's go into our HTML and go ahead and just add this image. Image, our source, it's this long link. And let's see if it works. I somehow got the wrong. What is this, like a random cat picture? Or anything? All right, well that's a different cat than what I selected. Yeah. I got tricked. Okay. Anyway, so this cat, we can, if we wanted to change the image of this, right? This is something that could be helpful. So, like, let's say, oh, we actually wanted this to be a width of 100 pixels. Right? We could change that, and we get this smaller cat. Here, I'm going to make it 200 pixels so it's easier to see. And the height is changing. The height is changing automatically as I change the width. But if I specify the height, some weird stuff can happen with our picture. We can get kind of a pinched look. See how, like, if I make this not a square, it kind of looks weird. So another helpful property that sometimes is really helpful for me is I write object fit and cover, and it will adjust the cat picture so that it's not pinched looking. Okay, that's like a helpful attribute. You're going to learn a lot of different attributes, not from me, just like from practicing on your own. That's where you'll learn the most of them. But it's good. It's nice to know a couple of them. Because also a lot of people show me pictures and it drives me crazy. So I'd like for you guys to learn that one specifically. All right, so now my cat looks pretty good. Okay. So you may have noticed some things about my UL, which is that it has bullets automatically, and it also has every element tabbed in, indented, yeah? So that's cool-ish. But if we click on it, let's see, I think it's on the UL itself. We can look at the properties that it currently has. And we can see, okay, this is the UL, and this is padding inline start, 40 pixels. List style type, disk, display block. It has all of these things already built on, right? So these are the default properties of HTML, CSS. The CSS on the HTML, yeah? So every time you make a UL, it just automatically gives us a padding. Can anybody tell me why this might be a negative? Okay. Yeah, right. Because maybe you don't want your list indented, right? This is giving properties for you that are outside of your decisions. So there's something called a CSS reset. It's a little early, but this is in this lesson, so I just want to make sure I cover it a little bit. And a CSS reset looks a lot like this. And what it does is it goes and removes all of the default settings that are already placed in there. So I'll show you what I mean here. But so essentially, it just sets everything to like 0. You'll see HTML. You can select multiple elements at the same time by doing commas. So you say like, okay, for the HTML, for bodies, for headers, for nav, for H1s, for A tags, ULs, OLs, LI, straw, and it says it wants, and yada, yada, yada. It says it wants the margin at 0, the padding at 0, the border at 0, the outline at 0. So it's called a reset because it's going to remove all of the current properties on here. So if I go right here and I just paste it in after copying that one in, we'll see that there's going to be a substantial difference in our web page. I'll refresh, and everything, the only styles that are now on this page are the ones that we placed on underneath that reset. Right, we set pink and all that. Well, we did that in our body, but so you see it adjusted the UL, and it changed the header size. Well, I think here, I'll show you what it really looks like without any of our styling, because it's quite unattractive. So, okay. Yeah, pretty bad. Hey,
If you wanted to put like hearts instead of bullets, could you like reassign hearts to like the default for
we wouldn't want to set it as the default, but you could probably figure out a way to create allies with hearts. Yeah. So this is like I've taken away all the default settings, and so the picture's gotten huge. The reason it's still pink is because we wrote that directly in our HTML. Oops. Oh, oh man. Right here, we can get rid of that. back. And I think the reason it's green is because we must have not commented that out. Somehow this didn't get commented out. So something where you've removed all of the default stylings looks like that. Super, super ugly, right? But at least after that's happened, we'll have 100% control over everything, the way everything looks. So any way that anything looks was our decision. And if you don't use CSS resets, you will come across problems when you make bigger things, guaranteed. And when you go back to try to make a reset, it will mess up a lot of the stylings that you've already put on your page. So when you're starting any kind of large project at all, even medium size, like really put in a CSS reset to just remove all of those other styles. Let me just go back to where we had it. That's fine. So let's go back to a good looking page. Nice. Okay. So what we've covered so far. We've seen the ability to style things inline in the HTML, but we decided that wasn't great practice. We've styled using a style tag, but decided that could get pretty long and messy quick. So we added a link tag to a master CSS, which has our styling. We saw that we can grab elements, and it will affect all elements of that type. We saw that if we wanted to pick only one thing, we should probably use an ID. If we wanted to choose multiples of something, we should use a class. We saw that we grab the IDs with octothorpes, the classes with periods. We also saw that if you style something for the parent, the child picks up that behavior as well, right? Just like humans, we have font size, we saw as a popular attribute, font weight, color to change the color of the text, background, we saw text align center. And we saw that we can do things with percentages. That's where we're up to so far. There's a couple little things left that I want to talk about, which are padding and margin, as well as, I guess, the box model. So yeah, okay, and I guess border. So we can give elements a border. So let's actually put things in sections here, just for fun. Let's pretend we had some stuff. I'm also going to add a p tag here. And I'll say like, music is a great thing to listen to. Beats crying. Alright, okay, and I'm just going to set this up to be in sections, which isn't something you'll always want to do, but like you might not usually want a header in a section, but I'm just kind of going to overemphasize the point. Yeah, box. So I'm going to put everything in a section. Or not. Okay. Almost there. Okay. So you'll notice that I did keep my LIs separate, like they're within the UL. Let's see if I can make this more attractive. Not at the moment. Okay. Right, nothing should change. Everything will look the same. They're just in another section tag. So let's see the sections let's make it a little bit more clear where sections begin and end. And so I'm going to do that by adding a border property on the section. So I'm going to say section, open my curly braces, and I'm going to say border, like, and then we're going to say how large, how many pixels we want that border to be. So let's say I want it to be 3 pixels. And then I can say whether I want it to be solid or dotted or something. But for this, I'll say solid, and then I'm going to say what color. So solid red. Let's say. Right, so I'm making a section, giving it a border of 3 pixels solid red. And when we go here, we'll refresh the page, and we'll see these sections. What this begins to hint at is the way I want you to start thinking about a lot of websites. I want you to think of them as sections. And this is called the box model, which is where every single thing is a box, essentially. So like, let's pretend we're looking at YouTube, right? And we go to their site. What are the boxes that we notice? Let's take like 30 seconds to talk with our partner, and then we'll discuss like all of the different boxes and how we think this might be styled and lay down in HTML. All right, clap your hands once at the beginning of my voice. Let's talk about it. So what are some of the sections and boxes that we see? Throw up a hand, share one. Let's go. Rafiq. Each video is what? Each video is, what would you consider this?
Like just the Elton John video itself. That would be one specific section that you can change the photos.
Okay, so that's interesting. Cool. What else do we have? What else do we see? Isaiah.
The ad bar on the left side,
Yeah.
that is its own section and then it has its own section within them. Like the home and subscriptions at the top. And then your playlists and subscriptions.
Totally. Yeah. Farah.
I feel like the section of one video is like recommended, and then in that section you have those videos, and then the other section is like influencers, and then in that section are like those influencers.
Okay. Cool. So you're seeing sections that way. Yeah. Siham.
I think I have that in the top, like where it says there's influencer. So I feel like different sections, you know.
Okay. Cool. Anything else that we're seeing? Yeah, right. I think we got a lot of good ideas there. Like when I look at this, yeah, I see the first thing I see is this area on the left side, and I see this is a whole section, and in this is some kind of UL with LIs. Each one of these LIs pointing to a different area. Right. So this whole thing is a section, and then it's got this section, the subscription section, and then the modern YouTube section. Oh, I'm not wearing my glasses, that's why.
More from YouTube.
Oh, more. Okay, well, I thought I guessed it right. Yeah. Oh yeah. There it is. I haven't seen anything today. So, right, and these are ULs made up of LIs, but they're all contained inside of their own little area, right? We can see that this whole thing could be. Oh, well, I didn't mean to click on that. This whole thing could be an LI. Let me go back, right? Because it's got a lot of information in there, right? This whole recommended could be a section, right? Like a UL with different LIs, but then each one of those LIs holds their own information, right? It's got its video portion, and then it's got its title, and then it also has the user's information, the picture, how many views, like the information about the video. So you can start to see all of these boxes on the screen, right? And this is really normal. As you go to different websites, you'll start to see boxes everywhere. Deja.
As when you were starting to pick that code, that's how the boxes kind of like form, like when you use it was the same amount, yeah, the same thing, but the same, you use alive.
Yeah, it was 3 ULs made up of LI. Yeah, right. It's very similar. Right, so this is something to be aware of. It's okay if we haven't mastered it yet today, but start thinking of things as this box model, because as you begin to build projects, and it's like, okay, hey, why don't you make a clone of a certain website, right? Which is something we might have you'll eventually do. Like here's something I once worked on, and you can see and you can see the different sections that somehow I took the wrong thing. I'm sorry about that. We'll go to Yelp. Right, so this was a Yelp clone at the time. Oh, so slow. Okay. Right, and you can see that there's all these different. I feel more comfortable because I actually know exactly what the sections are. Right, this was like this hero image, and then we had this was two different inputs, but there were and button. This was a form inside of the hero, right? And then this was its own set of like images or ULs inside of an LI. These are places, right? You have your business by category. Again, a new section inside, right? And then you had your footer, also a section, right? Same thing for like, okay, if we search for things with, let's say, coffee, we hit enter, right? We have all of our coffee places, right? This is, uh, again, this is like where we can filter things and whatnot. And so this is another section. It's a form that's going to be updating things based off of the information there. We're going to have our pictures of each restaurant or location, right? Is going to be its own LI within this like section, and then over here you're going to have your map of the thing, right? And you can just keep breaking it down into like all the different sections. Did I lose the pictures? No. Right? We have a review section. God, this site is slow. Right? We have a review section. This is like again different LIs that's being made up. This was more like business information. Again, was its own area, right? With its own lists, pictures, same kind of thing, right? And then, well, this is like its own section with its own sides and all that, right? So my point is you can start to break everything up, and so eventually you'll want to make probably a website that is a clone. I think you'll have to do it anyway in Unit 5. And so you'll want to really analyze the site you're trying to clone and think of it as sections and pieces that I can then recreate just those specific sections, and then you'll put them all together. Yeah? Okay. Let's go back to the main event. Okay, we'll just close all of this. Okay. Okay, so we also, yeah, Siham. How did, sorry? How do you make a picture as the background? Well, let's see, it's been a little while. I think you can say background URL, but we can check it out anyway, right? We'll say like how to make a picture, which is not really something you'll need to do for a while. Picture the background. Mine was also doing it with JavaScript because that picture cycles, but how to add color or picture, how to add picture to the background in CSS. Background image property. So like that, you would add a background image, and then you have the URL pointing to it. Some of the examples. But yeah, right, if you want to know how to do specific styling, just Google it. If you can't find it, we'll look at it together. But yeah, don't get too caught up on that. Let's also talk about margin and padding. We talked a little bit about border. Okay, so let's say I give everything a padding. So if I give our sections a padding, let's say 15 pixels, what do we think is going to happen? What's padding going to refer to? Nova? Okay, yeah, maybe so. Let's take a look. That's a good guess. Oh, interesting. So it kind of is, but it's also slightly different. So what padding does is it doesn't actually separate the element from other elements. As you can see, the red lines are still all kissing. But what it does do is it separates the content from its borders. So you can see that it added 15 pixels here, 15 pixels here. It also added 15 pixels on the sides. And so we got this space around, like, music is great to listen to, beats crying, right? We got the space around this text, but it's still, the element itself is kissing the other elements. It's just, it's been enlarged. Is that clear? So now, Nova, I want you to make another guess. What do we get if we do margin 15 pixels? What's that one going to do? Awesome. So Nova says, okay, well this time it's going to be the spaces between elements, and I think he's killing it, right? So if you give a margin, margin is the space between the elements, how much space you want around the element. Just so you know, you can specify like margin left, margin right, margin top, margin bottom. Same with padding. If you just say margin or just padding, it automatically sets it for all sides. Yes? Okay. So the padding, it might. Padding is going to look from how big the distance is of the content to the border. So if it already has space, it won't do that. So the margin will take the distance from the border of one element to the border of the next element. All right, so let's just define these a little bit. So border is border, well, that one seems kind of easy. Border around element. This is not how you comment things out. I forget how to do it. I think it's star slash star. Okay. Cool. Is it star slash here? Okay. And then padding is space between content and border. And then margin is space between, we'll say border and other elements. Okay, those are 3 things to keep in mind, especially as you start to think of things as boxes and squares on the page, yeah? All right, any other outstanding questions about this stuff? All right, cool. That's it.